Join with computer audio. Where's your camera? Is it not on?
It's right there. Well, you don't need to see that.
Need to see. There we go.
Turn it off.
Okay.
If I'm in Zoom or in the thing. I am muted in Zoom, but I'm talking to you on the thing. But yeah, John is muted to me.
All right. It shows me as not muted anymore.
All right.
See if you can hear me on Zoom.
Yeah, you want me to end the call then?
Yeah.
I am muted in Zoom, but I'm talking to you on the thing. But,
Jeff, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
All right. It shows me as not muted anymore. Yeah.
I can hear you.
Hear me on Zoom.
Yeah, you want me to end the call then?
Yeah.
It looks like John is still muted. I can. Can you hear me?
All right. It shows me as not muted anymore. Yeah.
I can.
Yeah.
It looks like John is still muted. I can. Can you hear me?
It shows me as not muted anymore.
Yeah, I can. It looks like John is still muted. John is still muted.
What is going on?
There's a substantial delay.
Can you hear me speaking now?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hold on.
There's a substantial delay.
All right, how about now?
There's like a 45-second delay between when I say something and when I hear you hear it.
What about right now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. It sounds like the delay is gone then.
Is the delay gone now?
You just said something, and it sounds like it.
What's 12 times 12?
A big number. What, 144?
Okay, the delay is gone. What I did is I am YouTube, I connected Zoom to the YouTube. So
Okay.
whatever's on Zoom is also appearing on YouTube, so I have to mute my YouTube.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, and there is a significant delay for the YouTube broadcast, so I can see how that would do that.
Yeah. But I think we got it going now, so.
Great.
Hey, what's up, Jake?
How's it going?
Good, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Good, good. Glad you could join us.
Thank you. Should I have my face up here or no?
If you want, yeah, some people will, some people don't. I just have mine not on there because I have the screen. I'm doing screen share.
Got it. Got it.
Plus, I'm not as youthful as you. Though some in this office say I am.
Says the 32-year-old to the 40-something-year-old.
So for those, there's what, 4 of us so far on Zoom. If you're also watching it on YouTube, just make sure you have your YouTube on mute because there is a delay on YouTube. You don't need to really watch it on YouTube, I guess, since it's the same thing. I have Zoom hooked up to YouTube. I'll put the number in for people to call in now. Put the music on.
Welcome. If you are, so please, thank you. You are the only participant in the conference.
If no one joins by phone, I'll turn it off.
Let's not just call it.
Why waste the minutes? It costs us. It costs you.
Yeah. No, it don't cost me anything. I have unlimited.
Well, it costs us
Yeah,
2 cents per minute.
yeah, it costs me nothing.
All right, we got some more people on. Larry and Chris.
No, just try Larry next.
Hey, Larry.
Hi, guys.
Hey,
How you
Larry.
doing?
Doing well, thank you.
That is good.
Larry, when the meeting starts and we get to the point, it looks like I did have a slight error in the agenda. I've called, yeah, I know. I've called outdoor ordinance 426 fence and wall restrictions. 426 is actually the outdoor display of goods and sandwich board signs, and 427 is the fence wall restriction. So I labeled them backwards.
Okay. We can deal with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Mark, that's you? All right, thanks, Mark. Looks like we got Jake, Bill, Mark, Aldica. So we got 3 voting members.
Beth Rahali did mention that she will not be here tonight. She's not feeling well.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I don't believe I had, I can check my email right now. I don't believe I had anybody else that said that they couldn't be here.
All right.
Mary Catherine said she would make it. George Pete will not be in attendance.
So Mary Catherine, Andy Bowman, Jack Deegan, Emily Dubé.
Andrew Bowman said that he would be here.
Okay. We just need 2 more to get a quorum. Unlike last time, we didn't have a quorum. So
Correct.
otherwise, our next December meeting will be like a 6-hour meeting. I don't think anyone wants that.
Yeah, that would not be fun.
Everything is hooked up in.
Warm in here, ain't it? Toasty.
Yeah, it's a little warm. Oh, we got Emily on.
Yeah.
Kyle, Andy's on. All right, good.
All right.
Give it another minute and we'll call a roll.
Hello.
Hello.
How's that? Everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
I hear you.
All right. If I'm trying to use these AirPods in case somebody goes screaming through the background in our house, and it'll be a little less apparent to everybody on this call. But if they can't hear me very well, I can get rid of them. So
Loud and clear.
great. So we're right around 5:30.
Yep.
Okay. So Victor, you're able to put up, I guess I haven't been on one of the Zoom calls. You're able to put up what we're seeing now as far as the agenda and everything. You can move through those things pretty easily.
Yep, the agenda, the ordinances, all that. I can scroll through as you guys talk along.
Okay, great.
And the same thing is on YouTube, so there's no need to stream YouTube at the same time if someone was doing that because it's the same. I'm connected Zoom through the YouTube, so.
Got it. Good, because I printed mine in too small of a font, and I don't think I'm ready to wear reading glasses on a Zoom call. No offense, Larry.
That's all right.
Hello, Bill. How are you?
Great, thanks. How about you?
Good. Glad to have you. I was great to see the message come through with both you and Emily. So
Oh, great. Looking forward to it.
I think we've reached our quota of Albion College graduates on the planning commission with Emily and Jack and myself. So,
Oh,
or at least attendees. I don't know if graduates that might be a strong term. So
Is Emily in here as well?
Yep, I think we have enough people. So Andy, whenever you want to start, Andy Bowman, you can
okay.
call the meeting to order, and then Jeff will take care of the roll call and stuff like that.
Great. I was just learning to scroll down on the right side to see who's here. So why don't we call the meeting to order? And Jeff, if you could do the roll call, please.
Yep. Beth Rahali, I believe, is absent. Mary Catherine Hanna.
Here.
Emily Dubé. We'll come back to that one in case we're having a sound issue. Jack Deegan, is he here? So George Pete is absent. Bill Mulder.
here.
Mark Bidet.
Here.
Andrew Bowman.
Here.
Al Dyka.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Okay. Made it.
To go back to Emily.
see if Emily is here. Was she able to? I see John Leo in attendance, Nancy, Kyle Knight.
Emily, can you hear us? It looks like she's unmuted. Well, hold on. Nope, yeah, she's unmuted.
I don't see her in my rundown.
Oh, you don't? Yeah, she's no longer.
No.
She
She
seems like she
disappeared.
left. Wait,
She
she's
may be
back.
having connection issues. Oh, yep.
She's back.
Back?
Hi, Emily, can you hear us?
It looks like her microphone might be muted.
Hmm,
Oh. Can she use the chat box?
yeah.
Is there any indication she can hear us?
I am chatting her right now.
Okay.
I have not received a response from her.
Okay. Well, should we proceed with the quorum that we have and hopefully she can join us?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go. It might be a
Okay.
technical issue on her side there, so.
Okay, so moving on to the approval of the minutes from the October 15th, 2020 regular meeting. Does anyone have any comments or corrections on the minutes? No comments or corrections?
I just have a thought after the discussion about the abandoning or abandoned alley. So the Bob Michaels discussion. And it said it was allegedly abandoned years past. I would like us to ask that the council abandon it officially, so we can take that kind of language out of these discussions.
Okay.
Well, actually, if I can touch on that. So the situation is this is not an area where it's an actual platted alley. What this actually is I think property that was never deeded to anybody. I can verify that though, as I pull up some information here. But if that is the case, then we can definitely take this to council to discuss the issue of abandonment.
Seems like we should clean it up either way.
I think they did a lot of those over in Leighton Park behind the IGA, I think.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments or corrections on the minutes? No? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
We have support?
Support.
Support. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Does that work on
Aye.
Zoom?
No, you know what? We'll have to do a roll call per the Open
Yeah.
Meetings Act.
Okay, understood.
Quick question. Who was the original motion?
Al, I believe.
Oh, thank you. I just want to make sure that I note that. Roll call then. Mary Catherine Hanna,
Yes. Aye.
Bill Mulder,
Yes.
Mark Bidet,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
and Al Dyka.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. And we're moving on to item 3, public comment and correspondence. We have anyone on the Zoom call or YouTube for commenting on something that's not on the agenda, or do we have any correspondence that you've received?
No, I see nothing on YouTube. Looks like no one on Zoom. And Jeff, I don't think we've received any additional correspondence, have we?
No, I don't believe that I've received any emails or letters regarding any of the topics that are on the agenda for tonight.
Great. Okay, moving on to new and old business. We're going to have two public hearings. The first is on a ordinance 426 regarding amending the fence and wall restrictions in residential, or actually in all zoning districts. But do we need a rundown of this before we open the public hearing? I think
Jeff, did you have a correction to make first with the ordinance 426 is actually outdoor display of goods, and on the agenda it says fence and wall restrictions, just to make that clarification for anyone who's watching.
Yep, I just labeled them wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Ordinance 26 is actually the outdoor display and sandwich boards, and 427 is the fence and wall restrictions. So whichever one you would like to do first, I think what we would do right now would be to have a motion to open the public hearing for one of these two topics.
Why don't, since it says fence and wall restrictions, is everybody okay with going with the words as opposed to the 426? So this would actually be a public hearing on ordinance number 427 regarding the fence and wall restrictions.
Yep, and that's on your screen right now.
Okay, great. And just so I think, Bill, you attended the meetings where we were discussing this. So just if there's a point at which you feel like we need to bring you up to speed on any of the history of it or how we kind of, this topic came up, just let us know. And Emily, if you can hear us, same thing. So.
Yep, I've got the background on this one.
Thank you. I just joined in. I had some
great.
technical difficulties, so I'm so sorry.
No problem. So,
Okay.
well, welcome and thank you for being here. So,
Thank
Emily,
you.
are you familiar with the issues that have brought this consideration for amending the fence and wall restrictions? Are you familiar with sort of at least one instance where this has become an issue?
I read over the information that came via email, but I didn't know anything about it prior to that.
Okay, and just real briefly, not to single out any one property, but there's been, for the first time, I think in memory, there was an issue where it brought attention to the fact that the code might be lacking in terms of limiting the height of a fence or a wall when it's not actually at the property line, when it's actually in what is known as the buildable area of a lot, so inside the setbacks. So that's sort of why we're here, and the rest of it I think sort of speaks for itself as to what we're trying to do. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing on ordinance 427?
Sure, I'll move that we open the public hearing.
Second.
Mary Catherine.
Okay. Al, was that Al with support?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Al Dyka.
Yes.
Andrew Bowman.
Yes.
Mark Bidet.
Yes.
Yes.
Bill Mulder. And Mary
Yes.
Catherine Hanna. Motion passes.
Okay. Now we'd open up the Zoom call and YouTube for comments from the public. We have not received any correspondence. Is that correct?
Yes, I do not believe that we have.
Okay. Is there anyone here virtually here with comment on the proposed ordinance?
There's nothing on YouTube.
Okay. Going once, going twice. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing and enter discussion?
So moved.
Second. Support.
Jeff, did you get both of those?
I did. Motion by Mary Catherine, second by Al Dyka.
Okay, would you do a roll call, please?
I'll do a roll call, starting with Mary Catherine Hanna.
Yes.
Emily Dubé.
Yes.
Bill
Yes.
Mulder. Mark Bidet.
Yes.
Andrew Bowman.
Yes.
And Al
Yes.
Dyka. Motion passes.
Okay. Now we'll have the discussion amongst all of us regarding the ordinance. Does anybody have any questions or clarifications that they need regarding the language?
Yeah, maybe Larry or Jeff could just give us a summary on it. It was, I remember it was a little hard to visualize last time. I think Mary Catherine asked for a diagram, and that would have helped me, definitely. I made one. And, but I think we could use a diagram, or maybe Larry can just run us through it now.
Basically, and there was a slight change from what the Planning Commission approved for hearing a couple of months ago and what we have before us this evening.
Okay.
In item 10, fence and wall restrictions, in the first item, item 1, within the area between the lot line and the building line facing the side yard. Mr. Raymer made a suggestion that Jeff and I thought was excellent, and he added the words within the area between. It was worded a bit differently, and just for clarity purposes, he added those words, so it made it very clear it's the area between the lot line and the building line facing the specific yard, whether it's a side yard, a rear yard, a front yard, or even on a corner lot. So that, in our opinion, made it very clear. We also reference a figure that's existing in the zoning code, figure 17.2, which helps us with that visualization of what we're talking about, that area. So I think with the addition of those words, I think the picture becomes a little clearer what we're referencing in this instance. Questions?
No, I think that was a good thing to clarify. And just so we know, the building line typically is the front, that would be whatever side of the structure is facing that particular yard. Is that accurate?
That is correct. That's by definition. That building line is a defined word or term in our zoning code.
Okay.
Hey, Larry, Mark here. Can you help me understand 50% of the space is open and unobstructed? What's the definition of the space? What are we looking at exactly?
You're talking about in item 1 in that first item there?
Yeah, item 1.
Okay, that's basically the same language we have in our zoning code existing, Mark. It references the density of the fence.
Larry, can you say that one more time?
Fence material? So it has to do with the fence material, not the lot or something else?
Okay. This is language that we already have in the zoning code right now. We're in the side yard. We have the same height limitation as the front yard of 4 feet, but we have this caveat here where if someone would like to go up to 5 feet, they can, but that additional foot has to be at least 50% unobstructed is the goal here. So something like where the first 4 feet would be solid, like a solid fence, and then the last foot would be something like lattice work. And I believe that's what our goal here is.
To the material in the opaqueness of the wall itself. Is that what we're trying to say?
Right. Does that sound right, Larry?
Yes, the explanation of that additional foot, that's right. It's been a while since I read this, so it took me a minute to catch up with it.
It doesn't seem over.
The term "the space," I think it needs to be tightened up or defined a little bit better. Now I understand what you're trying to say, but I think that's just a little confusing to me, anyway.
Would it make more sense if we change that from "of the space" to of the surface of the fence or wall?
I think so, because that's very clear what we're speaking about. The surface of the wall or the fence is unobstructed.
I think that makes sense, because you could potentially think it's talking about the area between the lot line and the building line if you're not following it. So to change space to something that's more clearly identifying either the fence or the wall makes sense to me.
It's right there. In the third line there, it says, unless any part above such height, which is referring to the 4 feet, is uniformly distributed so that at least 50% of the space, or as Jeff had suggested, 50% of the space of the fence or wall is open and unobstructed, provided the maximum height shall not exceed 5 feet.
Instead of saying space, why don't you say area? Because we were really measuring area, square feet, square inches, and then that ties it directly to the materiality of the fence or the wall.
So replace the word space with area.
Yeah.
You're just,
as I read it, I wonder if just replacing space with fence.
or the additional foot of the fence, because that's what you're trying to identify. I mean, I think that's.
Okay, here, a suggestion for your consideration. That on the third line, unless any part above such height is uniformly distributed so that at least 50% of the additional height, as opposed to space, add the words additional height, is open and unobstructed, because what we're talking about is a fence or wall can't be taller than 4 feet unless any part above such height is uniformly distributed so that at least 50% of the additional height is open and unobstructed, provided the maximum height shall not exceed 5 feet.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. Anybody else have any questions about the first item 1?
I don't have any item 1. No, I was going to say you've got a typo, but it's down in subsection 4.
Sure, you can move there.
Except that in the area formed by the lot corner, not comma.
Lot Comer, C-O-M-E-R, that's what.
You know, I think that could be sometimes when we shrink the size of the PDF files, and the font that we're using, RN looks like an M.
Well, maybe, except that when I downloaded it in my big version, it still says comma. Like,
okay.
Yeah, I see an M.
Yeah,
okay,
we'll
so
make sure it gets corrected.
Great, good catch.
Good observation.
There's 2 of them, the one below it as well.
Then Larry or Jeff, could you guys explain number 4? The corner side yard aspect?
Well, when you have a corner lot, the owner claims which one is going to be the front yard and which one is going to be a side yard. So we have to make reference to both of those type of yards so there's no confusion about which is front and which is side, because there can be confusion, because when you have 2 street frontages on a corner lot, you could claim both of them as front yards or both of them as side yards, and people try to oscillate back and forth. But Jeff has some very good techniques in helping the property owner, especially for new homes, declare which one is going to be the front and which one is going to be the side. And thus a corner side yard is actually a side yard that actually faces a street. So we're making sure that that space between the property line and the building front or building line does not have anything taller than 4 feet in it.
Where does the 3 feet come out? My copy's cut off. I can't see it on Victor's screen right now for a minute. But wasn't there a 3 feet aspect?
Yes, so I believe when we
There it
get
is.
close to a corner, if we're within 20 feet, so where those two property lines meet at the road corner, if a fence or wall would be within 20 feet of that corner, that's the limitation of 3 feet in height. And that's for visual safety for drivers and pedestrians to be able to see around the corner.
Does that make sense, Bill? Is that?
Yeah. Yep. And that's not a change from where we are today. The 3 feet exists in the current wording, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments or corrections throughout any part of the ordinance? And just so I'm clear on this, because I know we had a lot of public comment at one of the meetings where this was issue was first raised. The 6 feet in the rear yard, that's obviously, we think, sufficient to allow for a dog fence to keep pets and animals inside. Because that was I think that was one of the issues. Some people felt they'd been denied the ability to put a fence in the rear yard that was tall enough for, so as long as we feel that was my only question.
I did visit with that property owner that felt that she had requested something and had been denied. I did tell her that at some point, if she would like to come back and visit me to make a new request, that I would, have a discussion with her. And from visiting the site and looking at the area that she was referring to, it definitely feels like she should be able to have a fence taller than what she actually put in.
Okay.
So I did reach out to her and let her know that she could come in at some point when she's ready to do that.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Any additional comments, concerns about 427? Okay. We have a motion to approve as amended during this discussion.
I'll make that motion.
Was that Al Dyka?
It was.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, that's Emily.
Yes.
You're on the record.
Thank you, Emily. If we're ready for a roll call vote, I'll do that now.
Okay.
We'll start with Mary Catherine Hanna,
Yes.
Emily Dubé,
Yes.
Bill Mulder,
Yes.
Mark Bidet,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Al Dyka.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Good.
Great. Okay, and I'm going to mess these numbers up even though we just did it. Ordinance 426, outdoor display of goods and sandwich board signs in the Central Business District. And we would again entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, we had two motions. So we have a support.
Who was the support there?
Bill.
Thank you.
Okay.
Roll call. Al Dyka,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Mark Bidet,
Yes.
Bill Mulder,
Yes.
Emily Dubé, or
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hanna.
Yes.
Motion to open the public hearing passes.
Okay, so this is the ordinance that's proposed to, I think, basically make permanent some of the temporary permissions that were granted by city council for the summer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And is there anybody on YouTube or the Zoom call that has any comments or questions about ordinance 426?
I don't see any comments on YouTube.
Okay. With no comments from the public, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Was that Mary Catherine?
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mary Catherine Hanna.
Yes.
Emily Dubé.
Yes.
Bill Mulder.
Yes.
Mark Boudet.
Yes.
Andrew Bowman.
Yes.
Al Dyka.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Larry, would you mind giving just a quick rundown of, I think we've all had ample time to read this, but just sort of the main points of the ordinance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, back in the late winter, early spring, when COVID-19 hit the country and Harbor Springs and everybody, the business community came out and made several requests to the city about lightening up some of the rules and regulations we have in our downtown area. And the one about freestanding signs, or what commonly referred to as sandwich board signs, was implemented, and those rules were relaxed back in the summer. Mr. Grimm had reported that there had been no issues. He'd monitored that situation with sandwich boards on a weekly basis. Not everybody, but only probably a handful or a little bit more of businesses downtown utilize that advantage. But they found it to be very effective with attracting customers to their stores. Also, with outdoor display of goods, there were some of those rules were lightened up also about having the ability to put a display out in front of your store, provided that neither one of these situations would impede the pedestrian flow along the sidewalks, and we maintain that 6 foot of continuous, uninterrupted and unimpeded width of that sidewalk. In both of these situations, the sandwich board and outdoor display were very effective, were used on a minimal basis, but the downtown group had requested the city and then the planning commission to affect these rules so they would be permanent in the city. The planning commission talked about these for several months. And actually, the words that we see here are the words that were passed back in the spring by the city council to allow these two situations to occur. There was no real reason to make the rules easier or harder, but just employ the same rules that we had, because they were very effective and were desired by the downtown community. So that's where we are with this. This change, if approved, would allow these two situations to occur on a year-round basis, year to year, until the ordinance is changed sometime in the future, if it ever happens need be. Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you, Larry. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the really the two changes that we made, the outdoor display of goods being permissible and the sandwich board?
Yes.
I thought it looked good.
I just simply highlighted a period that should be a comma, I think.
Okay. Yep.
I haven't received any correspondence since we've put these notices out. But prior to this, and part of what prompted the bringing this to the Planning Commission to make these changes to the zoning code, Margot DeMoose, the head of the DDA, responded that she had received many comments in favor of these changes and requests from businesses to help to make this happen. So I think the downtown community seems to be in favor of it from what Margot has told me.
I would like to say that just so the Plan Commission is aware that our latest master plan survey number 8 on economic development, that survey has a question about signage and outdoor goods for display. And of course, right now we only have 6 responses because we just put that survey out today. But I don't know, the results from the public in a couple of months may be different than what the downtown merchants think. So I just wanted to throw that out there so you guys know that public feedback is being gathered through our master plan survey for those specific questions.
And we haven't had any complaints. That's a good point, Victor. But either Jeff or Chief Knight haven't received any complaints or had issues with these encroaching on the 6 feet of continuous uninterrupted sidewalk, anything like that.
At this point, no, I have not. The only complaints that I've ever received regarding sandwich board signs, for instance, was prior to us permitting them even temporarily, when I would visit a business and tell them that they weren't permitted to have them, complaints from various businesses of, well, other people have them out, why can't I? And then I'm just making the rounds downtown, letting everybody know that, with the new season that it wasn't something that we permitted. But even before when we did not permit them, and I would occasionally find them out, I did not receive any complaints or concerns regarding sandwich board signs.
Does anyone else have any comments or thoughts on the outdoor display of goods? I guess with no corrections or other comments, do we have anyone like to make a motion regarding ordinance 426?
Yeah, this is Bill. I move that we adopt the ordinance as amended with the correction of that period or comma or whatever that was.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay.
So this is a roll call vote to approve the ordinance as corrected. We'll start with Al Dyka.
Yes.
Andrew Bowman.
Yes.
Mark Bidet.
Yes.
Bill Mulder.
Yes.
Emily Dubé.
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hanna.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Discussion of capital improvement plan. I probably would just turn this over to Jeff or Victor to sort of explain why it's before us and anything in particular that we need to do before it goes on to city council, I assume.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So this is our capital improvements plan. We did our first one last year. As we discovered last year, a 6-year capital improvements plan is required. And the process is staff prepares it, a policy team reviews and scores it, then the planning commission votes on adopting it, and then the council gives a final vote on adoption before the budget is approved. And the whole point of this, as you may have read in the capital improvements plan introduction there, is to be used as a planning tool for staff in the city to look in the future at which projects we are working on and how to prepare to budget for them and to kind of organize our schedule in the next 6 years. None of this is set in stone. So just because something's included in the capital improvements plan does not mean it has to be done that year. It's just to be a planning tool. Further, having a capital improvements plan can help with obtaining grant money. And so having this was just, and as we presented in grant applications, it's just more proof that shows we're going to implement these projects that we're applying for. And finally, the goal is to have our capital improvements plan and our master plan jive together. And since we haven't really had a capital improvements plan, this is our second one, and our master plan update process is still going on. I mean, these documents don't completely jive together because there are some projects that are in the capital improvements plan that aren't in the master plan, and there's things in the master plan that aren't in the capital improvements plan. That doesn't make it wrong per se. It's just as we go on through the years, our goal is to just make these two plans jive together, so they're working in unison. So the master plan tells us what we want to do, and the capital improvements plan is telling us how much it's going to cost and when we can do it, basically. So this year, I went through all our staff. We got feedback on what projects we want to do and we need to do. Then we had a policy team, which included 3 staff members, as well as a planning commission chair and the mayor, as we did the same thing last year, review and score those projects. And the whole point of scoring it is to kind of prioritize projects in case, we have funding issues. We want to put the higher priority scored projects first, and then the lower scoring projects, we wouldn't do those, obviously, if we don't have the funding to do them. So that's the whole point of scoring them. As you can see, I just have some charts in there. We have, a lot of purchases and projects planned for 2021. But if you look at the chart below that, they're really not as high expenditure projects as the one we have in 2025. And you'll notice the one in 2025, why we have so much money for that is that's when we plan or have put the Harbor Master building redo or rebuild in that year. So that's going to be quite a large project. So that's at least $1.5 million, potentially more. So that's why you see more projects for 2021 and 2022, but it's more expenses in 2025. Some other charts, this shows where the funding is coming from, which fund. So the DDA fund, waterfront fund. You'll see that most of the projects are electric projects, or they do have over 25 projects. And then general fund projects are also pretty high up there as well. And electric, just so the Planning Commission knows, our electric fund is our healthiest, well, we have, all our funds are healthy, but electric fund is kind of flowing in cash. So they're doing a lot of projects, and that's good. We need to maintain our lines and our system and our grid. DDA is slowly building up money in their reserves, so they have fewer projects. And general fund is really how we fund most of our parks projects, the police department purchases, facilities, grounds, those things all come from the general fund, as well as operating budgets. The other ones are pretty self-explanatory as well. And then the next chart shows an approximate expenditure per fund, general fund and electric fund, of course, with the highest expenses coming from them, $4 million from the general fund and $3 million from the electric fund. Of course, this is over 6 years, so this is not for next year, but just keep that in mind. And then here's just basic, a chart on the average of our scores. Most scores were either ranked, most projects were either ranked really high or really low. Not many were given those middle rankings. So that just kind of shows that there's a lot of projects that we feel need and should be done. And there's quite a few projects on this list that we think are, not really that important or as important as some of the others. So something to keep in mind. So then, I don't need to go through this in detail, but the following 6 pages just show each year what the projects are, what funds they're coming from, and how much did we anticipate they would cost. The Methodist Church parking lot didn't have a score. That one we're contractually obliged to do it. We signed a contract this year to pave the parking lot. It's a $15,000 project. 2022 Marina Waterfront Park. You'll see there's if you see it on the screen there, there's we don't have a cost for that yet because we don't really know what we're going to be doing with the park there. It could be some simple landscaping, or it could be a large, big project. We just haven't have plans for that yet. So we don't know what the cost could be. It could be $10,000. It could be $1 million. So that is different than the $1.4 million, $1.5 million we're planning for the rebuild of the Harbor Master building. Same thing, 2023, you see those projects, 2024 projects, 2025, 2026. Then the last few pages are just descriptions of each of the projects. So for those that, when you see Bay Street Water and Sewer, you can really get the details of what we're actually doing with Bay Street Water and Sewer. And then the latest version I sent you, and that is not the latest version. The latest version is right now on your screen. It has a map. And it just really shows where the projects are located in the city, at least most of them. There's some, especially with our electric grid that extends well, all the way to Petoskey Brewery. Those aren't on this map, but in general, it gives you an idea where most of our projects and purchases are going to be located or benefiting. So you see there's quite a bit in the downtown waterfront area, quite a bit here by the City Hall Police Station, and then by Kiwanis Park and the DPW building, a few in the outer line areas. And this is kind of important to visualize only because, in our master plan, we talk about, trying to equally distribute, our projects and our plans throughout the city. And here you can see, where we're actually anticipating doing work in the next 6 years. And most of it is congregated in just a few spots in the city. So it's just something to keep in mind in planning purposes so that we ensure that we're not ignoring other parts of town when we go through a master plan process. So I guess what we really need here is a discussion by the Planning Commission on the capital improvements plans, if there's any changes they want to recommend to the projects, if they want to emphasize some projects over others. What we would be doing is adopting this capital improvements plan and then making a recommendation to council for approval.
Victor, I've got one. Is the boardwalk going to last, was it in 2022? Schedule?
What was the question, Bill? Is the boardwalk going to last?
Is the boardwalk going to last until 2022?
Well, it should. I can't say definitively. We were going to put it for 2021, but we anticipate the grant process, if we want to try to apply for a grant and going out to bid, that might take longer.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll know for sure whether this project will be a 2021 or 2022 project once we get council's final say at this capital improvements plan and budget meeting. So I think if it's the Planning Commission's suggestion that we should do the boardwalk in 2021, then we can definitely slate it for there as a recommendation for council. I just put it in 2022 because I was not sure that with the $550,000 cost of that boardwalk that we'd be able to find the money or get the grant money that quickly.
Yeah. I don't know. My initial thought on it is it's looking pretty bad, and boy, it's slippery as heck when it's damp, even in the middle of summer. And there might be a way to do it that isn't quite as expensive. So my thought would be to see if we could move that up.
And again, Victor, we're making recommendations. So if we wanted to include what Bill's comment as part of our recommendation, that's something we can do.
Oh, absolutely. This is the plan. This is a chance for the Planning Commission to get this capital improvements plan in line with what the planning vision is for the city. So you guys are going to make those recommendations, and then council will take those recommendations and discuss them. This is just a guidance document that we put here. And yeah, Bill, I do agree with you. Council, I believe a few years ago, they discussed, I think, a few different options for the boardwalk. And, there was some less expensive, some more expensive. And at that time, they wanted to go with this project. So is there something in the interim we can do to, at a smaller cost, to kind of keep it salvageable before we do the large expense rebuild? I mean, that'd be up to council, but it's a possibility. Anything's possible.
Yeah, just to get it on the table for our group here, some people have mentioned the idea of not rebuilding both arms, that maybe we could just run with the west arm and not replace the east arm, and that would be a big savings.
I think, I'm in favor of doing what Bill suggested. I was, understanding the funding now makes it more clear why it was a 2022 instead of 2021. And I think I have no problem, depending on how everybody else feels, of including, a recommendation that it be done as soon as practical. So.
How do other people on the commission feel about it?
this is Mary Catherine. I guess I have a sort of a step back question, which is, since we are embarking on our master planning process, at what point in that process do we look at these kinds of projects and kind of reconcile what we are looking at and thinking about in terms of the master plan with this? I mean, it feels a little weird because it feels like we're putting a little bit the cart before the horse, since as part of the master planning process, we really haven't had a chance to go through all these projects. I mean, honestly, being presented with a list of projects like this that are a mix of electrical and water projects, like I don't have any basis on which to make a judgment about some of these things. Like if you tell me that an electrical grid needs to be redone or a water main work needs to happen, then I'm going to say, okay, sounds like it needs to happen. But then some of the other projects, like at what point do we have a more robust discussion about those and how they play into the master plan and the master plan process?
So I think there's a few issues to deal with that there. And the first one is that this CIP has to be obviously approved each year, so at budget time. So we have to do this regardless of whether we know the results of the master plan, update process. The master plan might show that some of these things are not desirable in our community, and then we'd have to go back to our CIP, and then and council would have to also look at it as well and say, all right, well, the community really wants a splash pad, but we rated it really low, but the master plan says they want more things to attract families and children. I'm just throwing out hypotheticals there. So then we would have to go back to our capital improvements plan, and once we get an updated master plan and really make those jive together. I think the problem is for so long we've had a ongoing separate list of capital improvements plan projects that weren't in the master plan, like the boardwalk, for example, and others, for example, is that they never really jive together. So I think part of our master plan process this year and early in the winter next year will eventually get us to a place where then staff can really sit down and say, all right, this is what we want to do according to master plan. Here's the projects that council and staff have been talking about in the meanwhile, and do they jive together? And I guess that's something we'll have to figure out as we go. It's kind of a rolling, evolving process here.
So Victor, is it accurate? So do I understand correctly that obviously the master plan is every several years? This is something will be presented with every year.
Yes. So every year this will be presented. So the things that matter most for next year are those that we have obviously prepared for in the budget for 2021. Everything else is just really up in the air. We might put 2023 in there, or it might never get done. It's just kind of some kind of tool that we're trying to provide for a look in the future. But yes, this will come back to the planning commission every year.
So as far as Mary Catherine's concerned, I think maybe it's, if this was done every 4 to 6 years, obviously it's harder to make those two mesh, but we're going to get another go at this pretty quickly, relatively speaking.
Did I answer your question, Mary Catherine?
I think it did. I mean, I guess kind of what I'm getting at is, given the fact that this will get reviewed every year and that you come back to this, and it sounds like there might even be some opportunity to review or amend mid-year, because it really is just a planning document, then I guess I'm less, I have less concerns. Mostly I feel a little bit like, I don't know. There are a few projects I have an opinion on, but I'm not sure that I really have enough knowledge base to make a solid decision or recommendation. So I'm very much relying on the staff, which is fine. But yeah.
Right. Well, we have a Parks and Recreation plan that's from the mid-1990s. So when I had Denny here looking to suggest potential, future parks projects, he's looking at a document, our last plan for parks, from the 1990s, and it's really not, some of it's relevant, but, not completely. So some of these like Parks and Rec ideas, projects are just thrown out there based on surveys that we've done, but they're not quite all of them in the master plan. So hopefully, as we do this master plan update process, we'll have a better idea. And as we do a parks plan, we'll have a better idea really if these things should be in the capital improvements plan or not.
Right. Oh, I get it. Thank you.
I guess if I may, Chair, there's basically three elements here. I totally agree with Mary Catherine. This is the cart before the horse, but it's not uncommon in most cities where capital improvements and master plans aren't necessarily done in sync like the law says it should, but it's just reality of how it works. I'm glad that these are starting to come together. This project of capital improvement projects that is outlined here is extremely comprehensive, and a lot of the elements are beyond the master plan. But we start looking at our goals, we look at the results of the questionnaire, and we think about the objectives that we need to create yet. And we start looking at these capital improvement projects, whether they're next year or 5 years from now. And we start to think about projects the city sees as being important. And we got to couple that with what the public and what the Planning Commission sees as important. And we start crafting our master plan document to reflect those projects. I think it's a wonderful opportunity that we're finally getting to do. And when I read the capital improvement plan last week when I got it, I was really pretty excited about this opportunity coming forward, because now we have a list of projects the city is looking at doing, and some of them are on point and some of them are a little off point from where we're heading with the master plan, I think. But I think those things can work themselves out. So I think it's an exciting opportunity here. Mr. Chair.
Any, Mary Catherine, that's, I guess, the fact I feel better, because especially having been asked to score these things, which is like the world's biggest Sudoku puzzle, which I'm not good at. And so, I did feel unqualified to obviously weigh in on a lot of these, other than, like you said, if it says electricity or water or streets, those, or, police cars, those seem to take priority in my mind. So I think the fact we get to look at this again, in less than 12 months, really helps. And we'll have a lot more to go on based on the surveys and the master planning process. So with any other comments that the Planning Commission members would like to discuss, I think we have Bill's good suggestion that we, recommend that the boardwalk be done as soon as practical.
Or in phases, maybe a phase 1, just to make it safe, secure.
Sure.
Not bad.
Andy, I just would like to maybe explain really quickly, briefly, how we scored the projects, just so that they know that we don't just throw out random numbers. So basically, the scoring criteria that the system we have, 0 to 30 points, but they're based on questions such as, you get more points for if the project is listed within a current plan. So if the project is already listed in the master plan, the score, the project score is higher. If the project were legally required to do it, like certain streets, water, and electric things, then its score is higher. If it affects more people in the community than a smaller number of people, the project score is higher. So the scores were basically, even though there are 5 different scores with different scores, there was some good objective standards by which they can score them. So I just want to throw that out there, that so there is some advantage. So the projects that clearly have no plans, or not in any plans, or not legally required to do, those ones scored lower. Like, for example, the splash pad. It's not mentioned in any city document other than this capital improvements plan, because that idea had been thrown around once or twice in staff and at a council meeting. So just want to explain that scoring process for the Planning Commission members.
Thank you.
Hey, Victor, another project that people have asked me about is the wall on Judd Street Hill. We looked at that recently.
Yeah, so there's some concerns that from, I think a few years ago, DPW had an engineer, someone come out and look at it, and they said, structurally it's sound. It aesthetically doesn't look well, but structurally it's sound, and that you might be doing more damage to that area if you try to remove it and try to rebuild it. But that was a few years ago.
Okay. Well, that's another one I'd raise to maybe take another look at. It does look pretty ugly, and I know maybe I'm imagining it, but it does look like it's tipping in more than it used to. And maybe
That's
council
up to
can
them.
consider that.
Agreed. That wall, even when I was in high school, it looked scary. But yeah, I remember the conversation with Lucas when he brought that up, that they did have somebody look at it, and that it looks bad, but it is structurally sound.
And just in terms of the process of what we're required to do or being asked to do, it says discussion, but we actually would entertain a motion and call a roll call vote, or is it just something that we're giving recommendation informally?
You would do a roll call vote to recommend approval to council for with any changes or requests. Yep.
I guess with the two comments from Bill regarding the boardwalk, either entertaining doing something in phases, or at least doing something in the near term for safety, and a similar, maybe it's time, maybe they consider adding to the DPW projects, taking a closer look at that, the leaning wall of Judd. Do we have anything else we'd like to add from the other members? And if not, do we want to entertain a motion?
Well, I'd like to just comment. It seems to me that the only way that are looking at this capital expenditure plan is to really concentrate on 2021. And then next year, when we have a master plan, a more recent one, look at the rest of the projects. And in this, if we look at 2021, there are really only a couple of things that affect us as planning commission, and they're general fund expenditures. And there are just a couple of those that we might comment on. Kiwanis Park parking redesign, pickleball courts, and I think those are fine to leave in. But I don't think we need to really consider much about the other years, the later years in this plan, because next year we can beat those up after we have a master plan.
Al, that's a good point. I was going to also recommend that maybe for next year, I didn't think about doing it for this year, but maybe for next year, what I can do is, once we get that new master plan updated, when we go through the capital improvements plan, for the planning commission meeting, I can show what parts of the master plan relate to each of these projects. So for example, there might be something in the master plan, like a goal to, ensure that our electric grid is, good, stable, whatever, or that we need to increase activities for families, whatever it may be. So then I can, tie in these projects to specific objectives or goals in the master plan and show the planning commission. That way everyone in the planning commission has a better understanding of how to understand these projects in the context of the larger planning scheme.
And I think as part of any motion, we could add what Al just said in the sense that we've really, we're recommending that if the motion is made and passes, but it would be the recommendation that we adopt this capital improvements plan with the understanding that we really focused on 2021, and that when the master plan has been updated, we'll be taking a closer look at the other years.
I like that.
Okay. With the two suggestions by Bill and Al, would anybody like to make a motion that we either recommend or not recommend the capital improvements plan?
This is Emily. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Al.
I'll make the motion that we recommend to council that this plan be adopted with the considerations that Bill mentioned.
I second that.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. We'll start with Mary Catherine Hanna,
Yes.
Emily Dubé,
Yes.
Bill Mulder,
Yes.
Mark Boudet,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Al Dyka.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to discussion of political signs. I think this was something that came up obviously over the last few months. I have to say I was lucky enough to be gone over the election for a few days, and I was really impressed, frankly, when we got back to town a couple days after, how quickly 99% of the signs were taken down. So that was nice to see, because I'm sure it's not always the case, but people seem to take them out pretty quickly. But Larry, did you want to kind of summarize where the ordinance is now, or how they fall into it?
Well, as you can see from what Jeff put together, that was in your packet, political signs aren't covered per se. There's very little about the regulation of political signs out there. The state of Michigan, through the highway department, has a list of rules and regulations for placement of signs near right-of-ways for certain kinds of highways, interstate, Michigan, and U.S. routes. And it allows some leeway. I know there's been a lot of court battles over time on this idea of political signs. I was started to do some research on this, and I was running against a brick wall, because I can remember when communities used to allow signs to go up 30 days prior to an election, and if there was a person was going to continue to the primary, they could leave their signs up, but other signs had to be taken down within 7 days, and there used to be limits on how many signs a property owner could have and where they can place them on their property and the size. But I was looking at, I probably went through a dozen different communities around the state that I was familiar with, and I couldn't find where any of those kind of regulations exist anymore, which tells me the courts have either struck those down, or there's been an administrative decision somewhere that have limited what local units of government can do with political signs. So I was, this kind of came on late to the agenda, and I didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of research. But I guess we just wanted to have an initial discussion with the commission about thoughts and ideas.
Larry, you raised one question. I just assumed, frankly, it probably wasn't something that cities were allowed to regulate, and even if they were, is it something in the city code, or would that even be in the zoning code?
Well, generally they're found in the zoning code, because we regulate all signs in the zoning code. Now, there are some communities that regulate signs as part of their general code, because the enforcement element is different from the general law ordinance versus the zoning ordinance. But when you search just generally in a municipality for signs, and I wasn't coming up with much of anything on political signs, something tells me something changed somewhere, and I just haven't been able to chase it down yet.
Before we spend too much time tonight on this, is it better to have you complete that research or get an opinion from Jim Raymer, if he may, a legal opinion, whether or not this is even something, and I'm not saying we do want to regulate it or should, but you probably ought to find out if we even can before we spend any time on it.
I might be able to touch on that a little bit here. I don't have any specifics, but there was a state Supreme Court case, I believe, in Arizona, and I think there's been another one that followed along the same lines. And the general consensus of that was that when you're dealing with sign ordinances, that you cannot refer to the content of the sign in your regulations, which makes it much more dramatically difficult to do certain things in relation to one type of a sign versus another. And a lot of municipalities are at varying degrees of stages backing off the way that they are referring to their languages with signs. For instance, instead of referring to the content of the sign, you can regulate how large a sign could be, or where it could be placed in your yard, or what materials the sign could be made of, as opposed to trying to say, signs can't be read. For instance, that would be referring to the content of the sign.
Okay. Does anybody on the planning commission feel like we want to wait for Larry and for Jeff, perhaps to get a little more information and find out if we want to step on this?
Well, I mean, it would be good to know what is in the realm of possible. I mean, when I just did a quick Google search earlier, you come up with what they're talking about generally, which is, yes, you can regulate size, you can regulate placement. In some instances, in some states, you can regulate time, which is to say, like Larry was saying, either 30 days or 45 days or 60 days prior to or post an election, and if elections being held. But it would be good to know what, if any, we are allowed to do in the state of Michigan before we embark on whether we want to do anything or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the number, probably, I assume most of the issues that leading up to this most recent election were probably just to do with the actual number in any particular yard. So is everybody okay just making the request that we, in the December meeting, if it's on the agenda again, that we just have a little more information to go on before we get into too much of a discussion?
I think that's a good idea.
Great idea.
Mr. Chairperson,
Yep.
this is Kyle Knight. I think it's important, not necessarily just for political signs, but year round with our garage sale signs. I think it would be good to have some type of wording to make it a little more clear. When I was searching for political signs, actually it's pretty vague. And so I'm as well concerned about like garage sale signs or for sale signs or open house signs. So if down the road we could take a look at that, I would appreciate it just to get some clarity on our end.
Great. Yep. And I think it would be something where if we regulate, all, like Mary Catherine, all signs would be regulated the same way, regardless of the content or message. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think from years past, we learned that it's hard to regulate the political signs because it's the First Amendment issue and free speech. So I hate those signs, but I don't know what we can do about them.
Well, we'll help you figure that out as to what we can do about it, Al. And I think everybody, they don't necessarily hate them per se, but they get a little old after a while. So they become ineffective, I think, also. But at the same time, people have the right to do something, but we just got to figure out what our limitations are as to what we can and can't do.
Is everybody okay then? We don't need to take any action on this in terms of a motion. We just make a request from Larry and from Jeff to come back with more information next month. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody kind of object to that? I'm not calling an actual vote, but okay. Similar, but different. Next item is discussion of flags other than the United States and state of Michigan flag. I guess I wasn't aware that this had become an issue, but have there been complaints, Jeff? Is there sort of a history as to why this is on the agenda? Or
Yes. So a little bit of background on this is there are a couple neighbors in a neighborhood that are having some type of disagreements between the two of them, and I think a lot of them are potentially civil issues that aren't really issues that the city gets involved in. But it has spilled into a complaint regarding flags that were on a flagpole. And the situation was that they had a flagpole with the United States flag, and then also hanging on that flag was a flag for the college that they had attended. And they had some concerns and complaints and didn't feel that the person should be able to do that. Technically, when you look at our zoning code, and I've got that language on that document that I gave you, is other flags other than the United States flag and the state of Michigan flag are not permitted to be flown. So I realized that before I went to this person and said, you need to take down your flag, we have a number of property owners throughout the city of Harbor Springs that have for various colleges or universities that are flying their flags. I mean, I think just last week I went around and there were at least half a dozen or more of U of M and MSU flags that were flying. I'm sure there are other ones for other colleges and universities as well. So before I went to this property owner that was flying the flag that we had received a complaint about and told him, you can't do this because the zoning code doesn't permit it, that I felt I wanted to get some feedback from the planning commission, because I know if I went to that one person and said, you can't do this, their most likely response was going to be, well, what about these other locations? Which then means that I have to go to all of these locations of anybody that's flying a flag of a college or some other thing and tell everybody no. So I thought it would be best to come to the planning commission and see if one, the planning commission likes the language that's in the zoning code at the current time and would like to leave it the same and say, yes, Jeff, go enforce that language. Or if the planning commission wanted to look at possibilities for other types of flags that could be, flown on a flagpole. It does specify in here other flags specifically approved by city council. So I guess I have a two-part question. One, does the planning commission have any recommendations to the city council on other flags that they may want to approve? And secondly, do we feel that this is a situation where flags would be approved individually, or that we would approve a specific type of flag, like university flags and college flags would be okay, but not necessarily some other type of flag for like a special cause or something like that? So I guess I'm just looking for feedback from you to take to city council, where they will be discussing this issue as well.
Larry, I guess when this first came up, my question was, seems like similar to signs, are flags really defined differently legally? I mean, is it a content issue again, where we could regulate number and size? But how do you regulate content? That seems like it's the same issue with sign, just a different material.
Very frankly, I guess when Jeff brought this up, it was the first time that I've been working with the city that this topic has even come forward. And very honestly, in my years of practice, this has never come forward before. The highlighted language that Jeff has there in item 7 under flags at the bottom of that note that he sent everyone, I kind of question, do we even need that language in our zoning code?
Seems sort of like a mistake.
Well, if a person wants to fly a flag, that's fine. Generally, that's a United States flag, and there's a proper order for doing that, which United States flag is on top, and then a state of Michigan or a U of M or Ohio State or Michigan State or Albion College or whatever is a flag below those. But I guess I've never seen a zoning ordinance or a city regulation that will allow or not allow certain types of flags to be flown in the community. I've seen some communities regulate the size of a flag, because some of them get pretty big, 10 by 20 or 10 by 30 or 15 by 40, and they get in a windy day, they can get really noisy with flapping. And those usually occur in commercial areas anyways, and they just use it to attract people to figure out what's going on below it. But usually don't see many of those anymore. But it's just an interesting set of regulations about flags that's in our zoning code. So I may want to suggest that we raise the question to the council: do we even need that regulation?
Yeah, I'll start. I think we have no business regulating the content of flags on somebody's property. If we do want to talk about the number and the size, that's okay. I don't even have a strong feeling about that, but it's absurd to, have to bring your flag request to the council. And so that, I don't think we need to be in that business, and we shouldn't be in that business.
Well, but then it raises the question, Bill, when you're looking at the language in this. Okay, so roof signs, I'm not even exactly sure what that relates to. Portable signs, flashing, oscillating, or intermittent types of illumination. Okay, I can see not having lit signs, except that does that then prohibit all the people who put up Christmas stuff? Balloons, mechanically moving signs or components. Now here we get into it. Streamers, wind-blown devices. So like those cute things that people put in their gardens, are those prohibited? All the little, wind things and curly spinner things that people put up, and pendants and flags other than United States flags. So I think there's a lot in here that we could potentially remove. But then maybe we would want to have a discussion about, again, size or exceptions for holiday. I don't know. I mean, this just really gets into the weeds if you want to.
It's a good point, Rick. It really reads like it was intended for a commercial, like a central business district, where somebody would be using those, all that list of things primarily for advertising. I don't want to pick on any business in particular, but balloons and spinners and pennants. I mean, that sort of, you imagine a car lot or something, I mean, it's more, it doesn't feel like they were really concerned with somebody's front yard, but it is, I agree with Bill that we shouldn't be in the business of saying what flag you can or can't fly. So maybe that whole section 7 just needs to be dragged into the modern era.
Well, a little bit of background here from talking with Tim, the previous zoning administrator. I'm not positive about this, but his anecdotal information was that some of this language is here because of some commercial businesses. Not that anybody was specifically doing anything wrong, but to prohibit behavior before it started, like flags. If we didn't have that language, could potentially permit somebody to have one of those big sale flags where they just have the flag with the colored ribbons, indicating, hey, come here, we've got a sale going on.
Right.
And signage might not necessarily cover that if there's no message being displayed. So I think that's some of the reason behind why some of this language is in here. And an example of one of the flags that City Council did specifically approve are, when you're downtown, there's those little red sale flag banners that the Chamber of Commerce sells. That was approved by City of Council, I believe, in a previous year, to permit them to sell those as a fundraiser for the chamber.
Does anybody else feel like this should be separated? Central business district regulations for this type of thing, and then a residential more, or at least maybe you can do it all in one place. But it, again, I get the scope of what we can accomplish tonight is, I think, to acknowledge that it's dated or needs improvement, and request Larry to come back with some suggestions next month. And I think we've given him some idea of what really we don't want to be doing. So does that make sense?
I like that idea. I pretty much sit with Bill on opinion on the whole issue.
I do too.
Mainly, go ahead.
Oh, I was saying, this is Emily. I agree with Bill and Al as well. It seems a little, not antiquated, but yeah, it could be updated to different, residential and business. I agree, yeah.
As long as it prohibits Ohio State flags, we should be fine.
Exactly.
Mainly, I was just looking for feedback and a direction on this. So it sounds like the move here is similar to political signs, for Larry and myself to do some more research and come back with some potentially new language or suggestions on ways that we could update both of these sections of the code.
I think, and does everybody feel okay adding to that? Really, the focus seems to be on size, placement, and number, whether it's a flag or a windblown device, whatever that is. So, okay. Does anybody have anything to add for requests for when Larry and Jeff come back with some recommendations, or are we good on the flag question?
I'm good.
Okay. I believe that brings us to member comments. Only I want to say is I wanted to thank Lee Kramer for his years of being on the Planning Commission. I don't remember how many, but I know it was a lot. So, and I wanted to welcome Bill and Emily, which we sort of did at the beginning, but thank you guys for joining. So,
if I can interject there, Nick Whitaker wasn't here, so Bill Mulder reminded me that we probably should swear in the Planning Commission members. So, I'll go ahead and do that right now. I have the language. It'll be really quick. I'll have Bill and Emily just repeat after me, and then say your names instead of, my name. All right. So, I do solemnly swear
I do
I do
solemnly
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will
that I
support the
will support the
Constitution of the
Constitution of the
United States
United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the
and
Constitution.
the Constitution of this state,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the Planning Commission
That I will
and
faithfully.
I will
discharge
faithfully,
the duties of the office of planning commission
yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I will do all that.
of the city of Harbor Springs according to the best of my ability.
Of the city of Harbor Springs to the best of my ability.
All right, so what we'll have is have both of you sign this statement as well. When Nick is here, come and do that, but this counts for now, so it's official. Thanks for reminding us, Bill.
You bet.
Any other member comments? Going once, going twice? Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
We'll do it. All those in favor of eating dinner, say aye.
Aye.
So, just want to say that we did get a chat at YouTube from David McVicker saying, I agree with getting rid of that language in reference to the flag language. Sorry, I missed that. Okay.
Nope. Thank you, Dave. So,
Have a good night, everybody.
all right, hopefully I'll.
Have a good
figure out how to turn this
Thanksgiving.
off.
Bye all.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you very much, everyone.